A pivotal part of my own personal healing journey has been centered around dissolving the illusion of imposter syndrome. And it's the imposter syndrome that reinforced this mental prison that I had created for myself. And it's a prison that was created because I was choosing to be seen and heard in ways that kept everyone else comfortable, but came at the cost of my authentic soul expression. And to be fair, I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I just knew that I was anxious and self-conscious and had deep feelings of unworthiness and not enoughness. It wasn't until the pandemic hit that a truth that was deeply embedded in my DNA finally outweighed my desire to fit in. Because I was slowly starting to put myself out into the public and sharing my ideas and finding my creative expression. But I didn't want anyone to see me, and I didn't want anyone to hear me. And I think anyone who knew me or was introduced to me between, say, 2020 and 2022, you may not know that about me. But this truth that I could feel in my bones caused every mask and people-pleasing persona that I had been carrying my entire life to just come crashing down. And in the process, I was forced to confront both the collective and personal wounds entrenched in fear, lack, and abandonment. And I had to decide in those moments if I was finally going to choose me over everyone and everything else. Could I learn to love through the fear and the hate? Could I accept that choosing me was going to come at the cost of the life I had, which included all of the people and places and things within it? And could I still find abundance in what remained when the dust finally settled? Now, I know my story is not unique, and many faced similar trials and tribulations both through the pandemic and long before. And I know that some are just beginning to enter this awareness now that they realize there is no such thing as enough when you're working in opposition to your core truth, be it accomplishments at work, money, fame, accolades, sex, drugs, alcohol, food, or more specific to the pandemic, restrictions, masks, and vaccines. You cannot find freedom or happiness inside of those things if the way you attain them is in direct opposition to your core truth. Now, I'm telling you this story because my conversation with Christine Cardoza revolves around the lower three energy centers in our body, aka chakras, that govern our sense of stability and belonging and creativity, intuition, and identity. And we're watching the extreme imbalances of these centers within ourselves play out in the external. And if we have any hope in hell of initiating any meaningful change in this world, we must be willing to walk through our own fires first. Christine is an intuitive business coach, quantum energy healer, and owner of Oasis of Healing Spa with salt rooms in Waterloo, Ontario. She activates mission-driven entrepreneurs, cycle breakers, and healers to clear your lower chakras, release blocks, increase your self-worth to match your desires, and learn how to receive the life, love, and success that you want. The collective needs us to release the fear and dysfunctional patterns of the past and soulfully connect with the divine energy within. And when we move from the repel to pull energy, our aligned clients begin to ask, how can they work with us? Christine was raised in Kitchener, Ontario by a hardworking entrepreneurial mom. She left a religious cult as a young teen, and it was through a cycle of depression where she was able to heal generational childhood trauma and emotional dysfunctional patterns that helped release the deep-rooted blocks from childhood and allow her to open for more expansion. She's since created a program called Naked Alchemy to support those ready to meet their true, authentic, sexual soul self. Because as she likes to say, who you are in the bedroom is who you are in your business and vice versa. So you may know by now that I am not built for small talk, and neither are the people that I'm attracting to the Grand Rising experience. So I've been learning to hit record as soon as our call connects because I truly believe transformative healing begins inside of the curiosity embedded in our conversations that are authentic and honest, meandering, and uncontained, both with ourselves and with others. And during my lifetime, I've had so many beautiful and vulnerable encounters that I always wished I could just bottle and share with those who need to hear it. So this platform has been birthed out of my desire to do just that. So, formality is out, authentic expression is in, and I hope this fly on the wall approach allows you to feel what your higher self is calling in. I am so excited for you to meet Christine, and I know that at least one aspect of this conversation will give you an aha moment. And I feel blessed and honored to now be able to call her a friend. So whether you are in the Waterloo area and you want to meet Christine in person and visit her salt room, or if you want to connect with her online and participate in her courses, you can find her at oasisofhealingspa.com or connect with her on Instagram at Oasis of Healing Spa. All of this information will be down in the show notes. And now, without further ado, thank you for being here. I love you. Let's dive in.
I think people are realizing that they really just got to trust themselves. Like I had a man here yesterday, he's in his 70s. And his doctor says one thing, the hospital says another, and he's just so frustrated. And I'm like, good, this is time for you to trust your own body. Do you need those water pills? You know, your body's in a healing state. So yeah, just interesting.
Water, that's interesting. Water's coming up a lot lately.
Is it?
Yeah, probably because of the deep emotions that are being moved right now through this particular portal. And I know May is going to be, in terms of like astrological transits and planetary transits, it's going to be an intense month cosmologically. So I
Yeah.
find it interesting that you're saying water. Water's coming up for me in acupuncture sessions and being able to open up certain water channels. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, beautiful. Especially
Yeah.
with Pluto in Aquarius, next 20 years, there's a lot. I feel we are the foundation. We've been doing our own work and discovering some things and getting prepared for, like, as foundational members of society to be like, hey, this is my experience and what I went through if it resonates.
Mm. No, I'm definitely feeling that. It's people are being shaken awake, but they don't realize they're being shaken awake. And I think it's just because all of their shit that they've been ignoring and repressing and bottling and really stuffing down just can no longer be ignored. And we're seeing it play out around us in the physical. And that's just a manifestation of the internal anyway. So it's what a time to be alive.
Agreed.
What a time to be alive. So I'm just trying to figure out where to begin here with you because you have such an interesting journey and you've come so far throughout the course of your life from being inside of like a very rigid religious sect to being so deeply spiritual and free and finding a freedom within yourself that is in such opposition to how you were raised. What does that journey look like for you?
It's well, it started, so grew up third generation Jehovah's Witness. And it's funny when I tell people, they're like, ooh, I'm like, yeah, one of those door knocking ones too, as a kid. And that just really, I'm very sensitive, and part of the hard love, so to say, is that if you've done something bad in the eyes of the religion, then the elders will announce at the front that you're shunned and or disfellowshipped. It means that nobody can talk to you. It's as if you're dead. And if you still want to be in the faith, or repent for the thing that you've done, then you still get to come to church and to the meetings. They call it the Kingdom Hall, but no one is allowed to talk to you. You sit in the back. as if you're a ghost. And I think as a child, that was just too sensitive for me because I'm like, wow, how, if God is a God of love, which I really believed at that time as a young child, how do we, just not talk to the people who are supposed to be in our community? And so that was really difficult. And I asked at 13 if I could leave. My mom was like, yep, no problem. I was like, thank you. So then I went to Catholic high school. um that was not for me. I was like, it's so methodical, like so boring, and I'm like, there's no feeling in this. I was like, nope, this doesn't feel right for me either. And then the actually saving grace I feel though is I moved to a Catholic school that was teaching world religion. So that was my first introduction. I had to take a religion class, and coming from, I call it the cult, coming from the cult, I was like, oh, more religion. But it was a world religion. And I saw the threads of truth through all of the religions, which is really neat at that age. And then I married into a Baptist family, super strict again. And I thought they were the religion. Like I even tried to convince my family Jesus is the way, and the Jehovah's Witnesses have it all wrong and all that stuff. But really looking back now, it was herd mentality, and I was accepted into another group. And that's really what that heart feeling was another clan that had accepted me and was mentoring me in that aspect. And then marriage counseling was a big, huge disappointment because the pastor was having an affair with the secretary. And so like our marriage counseling, I felt was like, what a way to start married life, and not trusting the masculine even further. So through my divorce and moving to Taiwan and then moving to Costa Rica, I really just started to find myself. And what did I believe? I went to a bunch of non-denominational churches that taught about God's grace and love, and that resonated for a while until it didn't. And then I feel like I did nothing. At that time, it was when church came online. So you could go to church on Sunday via a video stream. So no one knew if you were watching or not. It was kind of like a way of hiding. And then I just stopped even watching those, and started to turn more towards partying and alcohol and sex and trying to discover myself that way. And I still had that empty feeling. I'm like, this isn't for me either. And it wasn't until the lockdown actually where I had to, I was grounded, like I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go anywhere. And I began to learn who I was and how to love myself from within through some mentors that I was blessed to have found. And there's such a beautiful transformation because the alcohol started to just melt away, like the wanting to have it or to do shots to go out with friends that I knew and loved. That kind of need or anxiety started to go away. And I never was diagnosed with anything, but I really, after mentoring other people who've had diagnoses, childhood PTSD, definitely like unprocessed ADHD, my brain, just the development of childhood and alcoholic stepfathers and just the craziness of my family and a lot of volatility was that it's, squirrel brain. It's like I'm doing one thing and then, oh, wow, as my nervous system has been calming down, then it's a little bit harder to stay focused. And really just learning how to navigate all that of like, who am I without the stories of the past, and really just that discovery, that inner, feeling of who am I? What's the truth of who I am and what I believe, not based on what someone else has told me from my past.
Yeah, that's really powerful because you had this like eat, pray, love journey on your
Yeah,
own.
totally.
Yeah. And
Valley's great.
yeah. And I feel like your experiences, and you use the word indoctrination, but it really laid an interesting foundation for you to be able to ease into and perceive the lockdowns in the last 3 years in a very interesting way. And it also had the potential to bubble up, like as you were talking about the CPTSD, the childhood trauma, and the unprocessed ADHD, which Gabor Mate always talks about as a trauma response, which is very interesting.
Mhm.
But we went through a really significant time in history, but also where extrication from the tribe was at an all-time high. And it was those underlying feelings and traumas that were being manipulated and played on en masse. So it's like conform or you're out. So
Yeah.
how did you process that? Was that part of this awakening that you had during that time, was kind of reliving some of that trauma from your childhood?
Interestingly enough, I felt like what I was seeing, I see patterns. And so what I was seeing is that everyone had a turn at being shunned through that whole process of the 3 years. I chose not to vaccinate. And so, I was part of the first wave of shunning, I feel, for those who are like, you've got to do it. You got to obey what the government is saying and the doctors. And it's like, yeah, but the numbers just don't add up for me. And I don't know why. Like, I'm a natural medicine person anyways, 4 generations. And so I would say, well, if it's just, I'm not even going to get into the numbers. The way the numbers worked, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. So it's a no until I observe and see what's going on. And having to stand in the hall as a kid for O Canada and not being able to partake in Halloween and Christmas and those kind of activities, going door to door where I had a kid from school answer one day and he was like, "What are you doing?" And it was so embarrassing. I've been the weird one my whole life. I've been the outcast in that sense, or, why are you doing that? Right. So I kind of feel like I've had that experience. I joke when I say this, but I've been shunned from the womb because my mom had me out of wedlock, and in a Jehovah's Witness family, that is a big no-no. And so I feel like I was prepared for that in that sense of like, no, I'm going to just stand by what feels good to me. What is my authentic truth? And if the person beside me has a different opinion, then that's okay. That's their journey, but it doesn't mean that that has to be mine. And so I could really stand in that. I think it helped that we didn't really see a lot of people anyways. And so a lot of our family chose differently than myself and think that we're the weird ones again. I'm like, it's okay. What, everyone's on their path. And what really actually was the biggest lesson for me out of all of it was how much I had judged other people growing up and just like my whole life through that. Because with the first religion I was a part of is that if you're not with us, you're evil or you're going to die. And so we would, look at everyone in that light. And I even not even with the lockdown stuff, but just other things, it'd be like, if, very much, if someone's not in agreement with what I feel and believe, then it was almost like, well, they're not for me kind of thing. A little, not cancel culture entirely, but I'm really glad. I'm glad that I got to see that. So I could open up more into, I would just say, or forgiveness in some aspects, but also an unconditional acceptance of everyone, whether you chose one way or not. That's your path, and mine is mine. And we figure out now, I think, that we're 3 years after, how do we continue to live, and how do we all heal ourselves, regardless of what side you were on. We are all souls here having a human experience, and we are all one. So if someone is having an issue or pain, then we're hurting as well, because we are so interconnected, just like the mycelium under the ground. We learn so much, I feel, about ourselves and just the world, whether it was YouTube University or, the different things that we were researching and watching. And I think it gave a lot of us who maybe didn't have critical thinking skills. Like, once you've been, I think, in a communist country, and I haven't, but just some comments that I had heard from friends, or you've been in a religion or in a home where you were pushed to do things that you didn't want to do, you have a little bit more of that rebel in you of like, why am I being asked to do this? Let it feel that it resonates with me first before I choose to say yes. So I think that was really my biggest lesson, was to learn how to love myself and to stop running. I was very much in flight, and to be very mindful of my thoughts of other people, and am I judging?
Yeah, it activated a lot in me, like a lot. And it brought a lot of things that I had been repressing my entire life to the surface. The fight or flight was huge. I was deep in fight or flight. I was in both, actually. I was deep in fight and I was deep in flight. And I had to start reconciling that. Okay, like the grass isn't greener, it's just different. There, like wherever I go, there I am. So there was nowhere I could run. And it was interesting because there was nowhere you could really go in the world and escape it. There was no escape hatch. And then you
Right.
start seeing exactly how you're trying to find different or create different escape hatches, and they don't lead you anywhere either. And I love that you brought up forgiveness and acceptance, because I do believe that that is what heals all, but it's of self and of self only. And it's only when we can start really honestly looking at ourselves and taking inventory of where we are and why we do what we do, and be okay that perhaps we were reacting and acting from a space that needed our love and our attention and our acceptance, because typically we're usually reacting and responding in ways that kind of rub up against conformity, and that we're not conforming to the ideals or the perceptions of other people. And we never realize that it's not living within our own authenticity that is what's crippling us and killing us the most. And it really was an interesting time for so many people. And I think that the trauma that was induced through that time and the nervous system activation, people are just slowly starting to come down out of it. Like, we haven't even hit the hangover phase of it yet. I think many people think we've hit the hangover phase. Like, we're just, I think, starting to come into that now.
Mhm.
And like cosmologically, I think that's kind of what's being activated in people, as well as we watch these planetary shifts that are taking place and what it's just naturally and organically going to shake out of people at like a vibratory and frequency level.
Right.
And a lot of what you do is the work on the lower three chakras. And that's housing all of the trauma. And it's really where everything gets stored. My own personal experience with working on my lower three was literally that I was in such severe burnout from all of my past traumas that I was being crippled by the emotional pain that I had. I couldn't walk. Like, my back
Mhm.
was just
Yeah.
completely seized, my sciatic down my leg. And my body was screaming at me, like beating me over the head, saying, like, pay attention to me. But I was too busy trying to get other people to hear me that I couldn't hear myself, and I couldn't hear my own body when it was in absolute distress. So I find it fascinating too that you use the word that you were like extricated, kind of shunned in the womb, because that's part of that lower three. Is that kind of informing some of the work that you're doing, going right
Yeah.
back to birth?
Absolutely. And I feel we heal backwards. So right now I'm at a space where I'm healing my 11-year-old self body wise. Like, I broke my arm twice, the first time when I was 11. And so my left arm has been really sore. We've been doing a lot of healing with my mom. I've been using German new medicine. And so it's my mother's side, and my back, which is interesting because I've had lower back pain and for a long time, but I've really done so much work on the base chakra that now I'm in the solar plexus, my identity of who I am. Because I was a travel agent before the lockdown, did that for 10 years, and that was more of my identity. And now, as a spiritual coach, mentor, healer, all those things that are newer, and I teach a lot around, like, in the lower chakras is a lot around sexuality. When you've come from a religious upbringing that's really strict, there's a lot of taboo um, concepts around sex and how you can be sexual and all those things. And so, even just coming out and speaking clearly to clients or in the classes I have, that is a whole part of a new identity of, I was always so shy and, wouldn't share these things in a room of friends necessarily on a camera. And so that's, what I feel is kind of like that. We're like a spiral, right? And it's this next level or layer of that healing for me is going through some similar things again, but with a new awareness and at a higher level of consciousness, which is really beautiful, that we can start to look at the things that are happening to us or happening for us. And the universe is saying, like, are you ready to look at this from an elevated place, not bypassing, not saying that we're better than anyone else who's not doing their work or anything like that, but just a new awareness, really, of like, okay, so a rejection issue is coming up again, because that's right from the womb. I don't know my real dad, and he knew about me but never came to find me, and I found that out at 12. So as a new teenager finding that out, you're like, wow, then it really affected, my self-esteem and my self-worth. But I can look at any rejection things that come up now with, okay, what part is mine? what part of the attraction point for this? Is there another layer of healing, or is it that I can look at this rejection, go, you know what, actually I did everything that I had in my tool belt and I feel good about what I did, even though maybe there's, we're not speaking anymore, or, the thing maybe hasn't resolved, but I can, in my heart, have some compassion and gratitude for the experience happening. It's totally different than being triggered in oh, this person did this thing to me. Etymology was something new I learned the last 3 years, and looking at, the meaning behind words. When we blame someone else, whether it's a person, the government, our parents, the blame is to be lame. And so if you think about, like, why is this thing happening, and that trigger, it's there to show me something. Your trigger is your mess ender. It's going to show you there's something, a core belief deep down inside of us. And so, it's just having that courage to take the look inside, and having some help to do that if you need that, which I feel we all do in the lower chakras. There's a lot of stuff that's down there, and it's wobbly, or we're rediscovering who we really are. And I think just having someone who's 2 steps ahead of us to say, here, hold my hand. You're going to go through some waves of even just looking at your ego, or thinking like, wow, I did that. I had a hand in that scenario or that rejection conflict. And this was my, part of my ego I'm not proud of that was there, but it's a learn. And then I can do better the next time. So I think it's just always, not taking life so seriously, and just I think of it like a video game, and you're at one level. And so at this level, can you collect the gold coins, where I see a dysfunctional pattern that I've been able to trip up, or I've been able to rewire completely in my nervous system and in my brain, those neural pathways to say, okay, I'm not attached to that anymore. I'm not attracting that kind of scenario that used to be really uncomfortable. I've healed so much of it that now I can witness it, and it can just be what it is. I don't even have to put a meaning on it. It's so beautiful as you just come into this humble awareness of what's going on around you, the level of the video game. Can I collect the gold coin to create that dopamine where, my brain's like, ooh, a reward. Then the brain's going to look for more of that as I continue to walk this path.
Yeah. And it's as a woman, coming out of the womb, having a womb, I think anyone who's dove into any level of epigenetics and kind of
Yeah.
understands that you were gestating inside of your grandmother, from a biological standpoint, when we start looking at the ancestral imprints that we end up with throughout this lifetime. As women, we have a lot of work to do on like the sacral and solar plex area. And not only that, sexual energy and creative energy is the same thing. And it's such a foundational aspect of like the divine feminine, and to be inside of your feminine, and to be able to learn how to receive and allow, and not force and contort and push. So I find the work that you're doing so fascinating and so important right now because of the push and the pull of the masculine. And it's kind of a hard conversation to wander into, because there's so many political ideologies and beliefs that are attached to like masculine and feminine, and the idea of the patriarchy. And it can be a kind of audacious and confronting thing to say, like, okay, you know what, women, if we want to be in right relationship with men, and if we want to welcome in the masculine that allows us to feel safe and protected and shielded, we might have to go first. And first in the sense that we have to settle into the feminine that allows the men to lead us. We have to be willing to put ourselves into a place of self-trust and surrender to be able to allow them to protect. And I think that's a scary place for a lot of people to be right now, because of the breakdown of the nuclear family, and the rise of single parent households, and the significant imbalance of the yin and the yang. And what kind of bubble, like, what are you seeing kind of come through your door? I know you have the salt room and you do a lot of therapeutic work in there, but you're getting people from all walks of life that come to visit you, all coming to you with different issues and different problems, but yet I feel like the core of them are probably still all the same.
Mhm. Totally. And I love that you bring up the epigenetics and, being in our grandparents, we were in their reproductive organs. So if you think about like what you're going through, so for me, my core has been this rejection piece. And the epigenetics of my grandma was her family moved away at 12 and she had to move in with the neighbors. And so like major rejection. And I feel that that generational healing is we come through, we're a soul family, right? We travel in soul families. And so we're the next one up of like whatever it is that we're healing for ourselves, we're only to heal ourselves. But you can look at, if you have children, I don't, but there's children younger in our family. So I can look at their patterns and the older generation and really see where this, our healing is in our family, like rejection and abandonment for sure. A lot of families have that. It's probably one of the biggest ones, and it affects the kidneys. So a lot of extra water weight, or people who have, a lot of issues where there's backed up or lymph and all that, really starting at the kidneys. And I did a post just recently. My grandma passed last September, and she was my closest grandparent of my like immediates. She was the only one I knew. And so I just, looked at all the things that she went through, and she was a fighter. Like she raised 6 kids, and a lot of it was by herself in the 60s, which was unheard of. Just wasn't as common. And so she's, has that grit, I would say, but she stuffed down her feelings. Like we would tease her as the grandkids when we knew she was going to cry or wanted to cry, her lip would quiver and she would hold it in because, it was just emotions weren't really allowed to be expressed, even, anything big emotions anyways. You think of anger, you come back to the table when you can be a good girl, or you're not going to speak to us in that way, or it's all this kind of pushing away kind of parenting, which is the way that they were taught. So coming back to just looking at the generational healing, for those who are watching, start to even just write down, what are your patterns? What are the things that you're going through? If you can find a German new medicine practitioner, someone who's using that as a base for finding the core, it's great. As an example, any skin issues is separation. Bones is a personal self-devaluement. It's just simple things that I think is the fastest way, even faster than energy work, on finding the root core of what is going on within you. But through that, then you can look at your generational patterns and what you're here to heal. And the kids now are that next layer of healing that family generational trauma of, what are boundaries? Millennials, I see them as, frustrating because I'm Gen Z. So as frustrating as millennials have been in my life, some family members, they actually have boundaries. We didn't have boundaries. We weren't allowed. We had to do what we were told. You did not have a choice, or you were punished or hit, or, something like that. Where the kids now, they're learning, they're teaching us actually what a boundary is and how to communicate in a way that's not yelling, that's not shaming or berating to the individual, and that we can come together in this connection. I really do feel in 20 years from now, we won't have the same kind of issues. There's not going to be the division, the racism, and all of that. These kids that are being born now, they're saying, just love me for being human, right? Love me for being a soul and for being here. And they're already hardwired. They already know healing. They already know self-regulation tools, a lot of them. And, being able to mirror that for the family. If you've got a kiddo that's really frustrating for you, they're your lesson. They're there to help you, to mold you up. So, it's such honestly, a beautiful time to be alive, because we are very aware of like technology and all that and how fast it's moving. But there's enough of us that are still here that really remember the olden days when, our parents or grandparents or their siblings, we would go to family dinners and there was a lot of canned food, like canning, where the food was natural and a lot healthier and a slower pace. And you put your feet in the garden, or a lot of people had a garden. as opposed to this, drive through fast life now. It's not going to last in that way. So we are coming back to, I think, a fusion of the great things from old, of like being out in the sun and having those feet in the grass so that you can ground, and really just coming back to nature and the true authentic core of who we are as a soul, with the benefits of having some technology or some things that do make our life convenient. But then there's that fine line of, are you numbing? Is it an addiction, your device? Are you putting it down and connecting with loved ones? Or are you always, at a restaurant on a device, if you're with a group? No, it's like, put it down. Let's learn how to be in relationship and have that emotional intimacy, which is really important, because we're learning those skills. Many of us were raised in emotionally neglectful homes, and that's a lot of the part of the work that I do, is how to have those skills, how to speak your truth without trembling or having a fear, worrying about what someone else is going to say. My mom said something the other day that was just so great, because when she was having my sister, she wanted to wait till the 23rd of the month, but my grandma was like, no, you're going today. So my mom went she went to go along to get along, is what my mom said, so that she didn't get in trouble, so to speak, from her mom. She's a grown woman having a baby, but she wasn't, allowed to honor her own body and what her body was saying. And so we're learning how to stand up for ourselves now and not just do what we're told, because it's going to, instead of creating some kind of friction in the family, it's like, no, this is what resonates for me. And this is what feels like for what I need to do. And you maybe have a different opinion, and that's cool. I'm willing to listen. But in the end, I get to make the final decision.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing, that activation of the throat chakra and being able to find your voice. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
finding your voice is also sitting in silence, right? Sitting in that really
Yep.
uncomfortable silence. I had a boss that used to tell me all the time, Nicole, you don't have to fill every silence, because when there would be extended periods of silence on like conference calls, I would just get chatty, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I had no awareness that I really struggled with sitting in silence, because I always thought, oh, I'm an only child. I spend a lot of time alone. And then I really started tuning into, oh, when I'm alone, how many background noises are on all the time? What is it that I'm
Nice.
listening to? What am I ignoring? Why am I doing that? Can I get really comfortable with silence? And then it's like I did a pendulum swing and I went to the other side, and I would spend like 8, 9 hours a day in just total silence. And I'm now just kind of starting to find that like equilibrium and balance of bringing desirable sound back into my life. So I think that's something that I struggled with. It's like, okay, well, now I need to find things that feel like they're in harmony and resonance. And that can take a while in a world that's so noisy, to find things that are pleasing, right? So it's like, oh, nature, I find nature very pleasing. So I'll go out and I'll listen to the birds. I'm starting to find music that really just kind of fills my soul. Um, Meeting people and making connections that I can have authentic conversations with and not feel like the total weirdo and the outcast that I've kind of always felt. And I think that's
You're
where
doing
people
great.
are, right? And I think that's where people are at right now too. Is one of the beautiful things about the internet is that it just allows you to kind of find that tribe, and you don't need the permission or validation of anyone else to do it. You can start to seek out this information in a way that honors where you're at right now. And then as that information, it's interesting because it's like the observer effect, like whatever you observe, like instantly starts to change. And once you see something, you can't unsee something. And this knowing that starts to develop inside of you creates a resonance and a frequency that will slowly start to attract things into your life at a very subconscious level. But if you're willing to like just observe and really pay attention and kind of follow those breadcrumbs of your curiosity, it can bring you into like the most amazing places. It can also bring you into the depths of your own hell, but that's not permanent. And I feel like if we can kind of step out of the diagnosis psychosis that we have in our society right now, which is like as soon as you have a bad thought, there is something intrinsically wrong with you. It's like, what
Mhm.
if it's a rite of passage? What if you are going through an initiation instead? And just for me, that being able to kind of flip that on its head was so empowering. was so empowering to not look at something and go, oh, this is my genetics that are dooming, that's creating this doom and gloom in my life. And I now have this life sentence of health issues. It's like, no, this ends with me. Like I'm not going to perpetuate this. I'm going to figure out how to move forward and rise above this. And it took a minute, but that dark night of the soul became an initiation process for me and a rite of passage into myself.
Mhm. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful dance. Is how it feels with this like discovery. And I love that you mentioned the throat. Mine's clearing right now. um, and that is connected to the sacral. So it's the same cell that separates sacral and the the throat chakra. So this is our energetic mouth from down the pelvic region to here. And so when we enter a room, this is what we're speaking with before we even open our mouths to say a word. And so, for those who are holding any shame, that's my favorite thing to talk about to clear. If you're holding shame in the body for whatever reason, you're not going to have necessarily that confidence to speak your truth because you're feeling small. And so it is clearing out the sacral and whatever's there. But what's actually even more interesting, and I love that you're wearing like a yellow today, is the solar plexus. Because when you are really clear in your identity and who you are, and we both love human design for that, then the throat opens up. You become stronger because it's not this, well, I've taken this course or I've learned these things and it's a passion. I kind of like it, to no, I know why I'm here actually. And this is a part of my template or my birth chart, or this is what I'm here for. And as a projector, are you a projector as well?
I'm a manifester.
Manifester. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was mentoring a projector yesterday who is 32. She's young, learning some sound. We're doing frequency healing and just how powerful that is. And I was just like, I feel just giving love into her of this identity of like, as a projector, you're a coach, you're a guide, you're a teacher, like really own that. Because when you've come from an environment that maybe, you have the wobbles or you're just not sure who you are, or, parents have suggested things for you to do all along. You've never really had that voice or saying like, nope, this is what I'm here for. In those wobbles is really just to learn who you are, that know thyself. And astronomy, I feel better than horoscope. So astronomy, astrology, and really knowing like why you're here, that whole birth chart and the plan of where your planets are and stuff like that, have someone do that reading for you. Is that something that you do?
It is something that I do. And I've had my astronomy charts looked at. I've looked at my own human design chart. And for anyone who's listening and they're not sure of what we were talking about with manifestor and projector, it's human design. And I'll get you to explain a little bit about that in a minute. But when I found human design, it was interesting because I had always used the term that I'm just fascinated by human design, but not actually knowing that human design was like a
Mm,
modality that
mm,
that you could actually work with. I didn't know that. I was just thinking like I'm a human, like how I'm designed is so fascinating. And then when I found human design and I could see where it was starting to pull together like the kind of the astrology that I love and the more esoteric, but then also the body mapping that fundamentally changed my life. And
mhm,
starting to see like through my own self-discovery, I knew that I had specific physical issues, and then seeing it reflected back to me in my human design chart and where there were potential blockages versus where I had more open channels, what would be very natural to me versus what would be more resistant, was crazy to see. And it was through human design where I learned that, and I always knew this, but I had a deep knowing, but I would always kind of like trip over myself, that if I want to have a clear path in life, I just need to inform people of what I'm about to do. And to have that again reflected back to me, because I'm very much I didn't have my voice. I didn't know how to use my voice. So I would react to situations instead of respond. And I would just do things of my own volition instead of letting people know what I was going to do. And that would always create such a trickle effect in my life that just blocked me from so many blessings, created far too many lessons that I had to keep repeating. And human design has really opened my eyes to just a clearer path forward. And it's validated an inner knowing that I've had for quite some time.
Yeah,
So
that's so great. Human design, I've been studying it since 2019, and I didn't really know energy work at that time, but I was covered in goosebumps. Like I did a weekend, and it was just like, wow, this is like, it is a path that someone can kind of just learn a little bit more about who they are, and then they get to decide how to bring that out into the world, or what that looks like for them. It's not like, you have one purpose and you must live it. Not at all. It's like, mine is passion, which is so amazing that I work in the sacral chakra mainly. It's passion. It's bringing people to the authentic truth of who they are. And I make it fun. And it is a little bit about passion, and a little bit for the bedroom, and how to feel confident in all areas. Because as you do one thing, you do all. So if you're hiding in the bedroom, you're also hiding in your business. And so with human design, just to explain a little further, I like quantum human design by Karen Curry Parker. She also includes the quantum physics, and I learned quantum energy healing, and she's a seer. So she even can, see that in 2027, 2028, there's going to be another split in humanity. And again, everyone's on their soul path. There's no right, wrong, or I want to be on that team or this team. Nope, you're here for whatever is going to happen for you, and what's meant for you won't miss you. So you don't have to worry about what's the split or be afraid. Just continue, coming back home to yourself. And yeah, I think just learning more about your authentic self and doing that inner work, our inner water, so to speak, is going to allow your outer experience be a lot less resistance, right? You're going to have more joy and gratitude in the things that are going on around you. And I'm just caught, not even caught, but I take kind of stock in my day of like, what's happening? What are the conversations? What have I been thinking about? What is coming through for manifestations? And I'm just in awe and amazement. And I'm just like, thank you, spirit. Thank you, universe. Because, we're able to create the reality that we have. And I think we've just been taught that you either put out fires, or you have to do what you're told, or you just, do the things that come along. But because we are a magnet, we actually get to create. So it's almost like turning that energy out and saying, this is who I am, and this is the life that I want, or the people that I want around me. And then you start to watch you then become a magnet to that, and you are drawing people in instead of, going out to hustle and find the things you want. They actually just start to come into your awareness and your presence, because we're building that inner core of, we believe we're worthy, we're deserving of the things that we want, of course, doing no harm to anyone else. But it's just, life becomes more joyful, and there is more pleasure in the day to day. And this has been a work for me, because a lot of days I woke up in dread, like, oh, what's today going to hold? Especially, pre 2019, when I started my own really that deeper inner work. So I love, our conversations. This is our second one. Have just been so enriching for me, because it's just, confirmation that we've, been on our own two paths, and the things that we've been learning that just really resonate, and how we have this heart for humanity and helping people to move forward, through whomever finds us. It's just so nice to have, people along the path that we can link arms with and go, okay, what's next? How do we, only look after ourselves? We have to stay in our own lane, but the things that we are creating or want to create, then we can, kind of create this network of people who are on a similar path of finding ways that make our lives better, and then for the people around us.
life got really trippy for me when you described it so beautifully. And I love hearing other people say it, because then I don't feel so crazy. And I'm saying that because I think other people are having an aha moment right now who are listening, is that when you go through your day and you become really consciously aware of who's showing up for you, and how you
Mm.
feel in your body when they're standing in front of you, and the conversations that start happening, and then the little synchronicities that pop up throughout the day, whether it's repeating numbers, or you hear a song, or you find something on the ground, or something you were thinking about just materializes in front of you. Like, those are the little glimpses of the magic that is so accessible to us when we learn how to really be present and take responsibility for ourselves, really just turn all the fingers inward and stop pointing outside of ourselves and truly understand, like you said, that you're the creator of your reality. You're the only common denominator of your life. And everything that is showing up for you is here to teach you something. And that has been such a fundamental shift for me. And I mean, through the pandemic, I took a little nap. Like I knew this information coming into the pandemic. But I had deep ancestral wounds triggered in me. I think past lives. I once had someone tell me that in a past life, I was a lawyer that was fighting for like to balance the scales of justice, and I was killed for it. And I found that out in like 2015, 2016. And I thought it was hilarious. And then I had like this conscious awareness of it as I was moving through the pandemic, doing the work that I was doing, which was so justice driven. And I'm like, whoa, like this, whatever's being triggered in me and activated during this time is like I was in deep survival mode around what was happening. I didn't have a fear of a virus. I had a fear of the government and the measures that were being put out. And then I really had to sink back into myself after like my world collapsed. I had a long-term relationship end. I had my business partnership end. Everything ended in like a very short period of time that had to like push me deep into another cocoon. And that was the cocoon of, okay, Nicole, this is your life. Only you can live it. Only you can attract what comes into it. So if all of this stuff is coming up for you right now, where have you really been betraying yourself? Where have you not been completely honest with yourself? What is it that you're refusing to look at and accept that's keeping these patterns alive? And for me, it's like chaos or crash. Like I tend to fall into those two extremes. It's like, so how do I kind of bring myself and find that center and kind of enter into the center of my own storm and be able to hold myself there instead of getting sucked out every time, the tornado starts to spin a little too fast. And this is where I believe, when you talk about quantum healing, where when you can really align yourself with that truth inside of you and at a very deep soul level, that's where spontaneous healing can occur. And that's where paradigms and belief systems just burn to the ground immediately. But with that comes a very real shift in your external reality. And that's where we kind of can get scared and start reaching for the vices and the people and the places and the behaviors that are familiar. And that's where human design and kind of astrology and stuff like that's interesting, because you can start looking into like your south node and kind of where you came from and what it is that you're here to overcome. And for me, it's like the patterns of relationships and keeping myself small inside of a relationship. To keep the peace and keep the comfort. So having that so activated throughout the pandemic, where I was loud and very visible and in opposition to the conformist policies that were going and being perpetrated, my fear of being seen and heard dissolved in an instant. Up until that point, I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to hear me, but that was the hill I was willing to die on. And it's like everything just went, whoop, nope, no fear anymore. You're doing it. So it's really fascinating work. And like you said, to be able to meet other people. And again, this is not by accident. Like we were introduced by Sabrina, but this is not an accident. There's greater forces at play.
I love it.
Yeah.
So good. What's your vision? I'm so curious. What do you have on the go? Like, what's your vision or what you're creating? Because I know it's to help people.
Yeah. For me, I think my vision is to create a new version. I've always felt like I'm a connector. I'm kind of a connector of big ideas, people, places, and really how to kind of achieve like a much larger goal. I've just always been able to tap into that with other people and help them see their greatest potential so that they can kind of rise into it. And for me, I do see myself creating like a new form of transformational truth media, in the sense that we're looking at media as in me, media, and getting really really clear on the truth of who you are, and then how to start using the external world as your roadmap back to yourself, so that when we're looking at external events, instead of reacting to them, we're responding to them. And we're not responding to the event as it's happening. We're responding to how it's making us feel, what it's bringing up inside of us. And because it's such a multi-dimensional plane that we're living in, and the road home to yourself is so varied and everyone gets there in a different way. And I really think that there's a gap right now where information, as much information exists, it's still very siloed. And I'm looking to kind of unsilo it and have the conversations and put people around a table that wouldn't ordinarily be around a table, and have this information accessible in a way that can reach you where you're at. And I also think that in a lot of media spaces, there's still a conformity that exists. And I don't like the idea of editing. One, I just don't want to do it. But two, I also, who am I to edit your voice? Your voice is your voice. It's to be heard as you say it. We all have something to say that reaches people in a very different way, whether it's written through your artistic expression, if it's spoken. So I want to be able to create a container and a vessel for people to have that true expression of themselves, and allow other people to see their possibilities inside of these realities. So that's
Mhm.
my big vision. And what about you? What's your big vision?
Love it. I feel I'm like the solution-based person. It's like, okay, I there is that deeper generational healing and the healing from within, but I call it a shift and lift. It's like, let's figure out, yes, you've got the stuff to heal. We all have a story. We all have something that we're wanting to heal. I feel that's why we've come. It's a part of why we're here, but then also, why are you here? What is that next step? And how can we, bring more clarity or confidence for you? So I like to work with either new entrepreneurs or those who have transitioned, maybe adding their spiritual work into their work that they were doing before, or they've lost their job because of the last 3 years, and they're just like, they're in it. Everyone who is in a rebirthing stage, because in whatever stage you're in, you still need to have, I feel, a mentor, someone to come alongside you and to, throw ideas, back and forth, or to look at it. Again, we can only heal ourselves, and we only know that deeper inner calling and through the stillness. But being able to hold a space. Naked Alchemy is my program, and it's just like the truth of who you are, knowing that authentic truth. But it's like a really fun, gentle healing path of like healing the old wounds, how we process emotions in the body, healing the mother father wound, that crunchy wound, and then into intimacy, which is into me seek, and the etymology, and then sacred sexuality, where it doesn't have to be taboo, and the things that you like are things that you like, as long as you're not doing harm to others. It's, being able to be fully you, authentic, and what that looks like. And then how could you take that, the real truth of who you are, and help someone else, in the way that we're on a journey. And I really do feel everyone's story, like maybe you're to raise kids, maybe to be a teacher, or maybe to create a whole new way for kids to learn. And that's really, what you've come for, is to not say yes to a certain system, because you're actually here to recreate something different. So change makers, cycle breakers, the weirdos, the black sheep, like those are the kind of people that usually find me, because I get their story. I've also had something similar, and it's just like, okay, let's take what is, let's pull out the nuggets that are great. That's your gold. And then how do we take your shadow and your light pieces, merge them together so that your clients can energetically find you, and they're like, oh, your story is very similar to mine, or are you reading my journal? Like, this seems so similar to something that, is within the core of me. So it's just a way of, I feel, helping those who want to help humanity and move forward with the tools and the skills on how to do that. Not only the suggestions and the business ideas, but that inner confidence, that inner awareness of who we really are on that deeper level, our true identity.
Beautiful. So if someone just listened to that and went, is she reading my journal? Where can they find you? How can they find you? How can they get in contact with you?
Thank you so much. So email is oasisofhealingspa@proton.me. Instagram is great. Oasis of Healing Spa. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook, not very much. Currently my website's having a little bit of its own Mercury retrograde hiccup. So the best way is to reach out to me by email or through a private message on Instagram. And I'm willing to have a conversation. Just say, hey, what do you need? Like, where are you at? If I can't help you, then I can guide you and direct you in another direction so that you'll have the next step or 2 steps for yourself to be able to move forward.
Beautiful. I will make sure that all of your information is in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing your beautiful energy with us today. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you, and I hope we have many more.
Me too. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Christine is a beautiful embodiment of what it means to walk through this world with a deep sense of gratitude, compassion, and reverence for the stories, experiences, and ancestors who have shaped you. And she exemplifies the personal power that gets reclaimed when you can accept and forgive the more painful chapters and transform them into the medicine that fuels not only your greater purpose, but how you show up in service to others. There are definitely more conversations in our future, so if you heard something that you want us to dive deeper into, let me know in the comments or send me an email at support@grandrising.live. And before you go, please don't forget that sharing is caring. So send this episode to those you love, hit subscribe on the Grand Rising Experience wherever you are listening, and leave a rating and a review. Until next time, I love you.